à Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne. I'm very pleased to welcome you to Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, and more particularly here in this Richelieu Amphitheatre of the Sorbonne. This place is symbolic for several reasons. On the one hand, it's a place of history, one of the origins of the French university, the birthplace of critical thought, of enlightenment, and of the influence of the European human and social sciences around the world. On the other hand, it's also a symbol for us, Una Europa, because it's here, in this place, that the President of the French Republic announced in 2017 that he called for the construction of European University. At Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, we already began this work of cooperation and reflection with our 8 partners. 5 years later, and despite for a worldwide health crisis, here we are, reflecting on the European construction of higher education and research. Hundreds of colleagues and students are now involved in Una Europa, and we can only congratulate ourselves collectively. Una Europa is an example of what we are able to do today in the term of cooperation, an example of a vision that we wish to carry for the Europe of tomorrow. Differences, diversity are some of the most valuable seeds of strength, virtues, and common good. I cannot say this word today without thinking in solidarity with the Ukrainian people, victims of the Russian invasion. This war, back in Europe, must remind us how important our values are: democracy, freedom, truth. We have a special role to play as academics in order to defend them, even more today than yesterday, and especially for tomorrow. Our work in the framework of Una Europa is essential. Hundreds of years ago, the founders of the Sorbonne wrote on that wall, Pacem summa tenent, nous tenons la paix, we keep the peace. This very building is built on the idea that knowledge and common understanding are the premises of peace, a peace that will be built tomorrow by our students, through bringing the idea of Europe to life. The subject of this Una Talk, the European degrees, is one of the tools that will enable us to strengthen the cooperation between our countries. It's above all sharing of value. It's above a common vision of what education through research should be on European scale. I would like to thank the participants of this event: Jean-Marc Bonissot, Anna-Claudia Camerano, Thierry Coulon, Antoine Doucet, Vanessa Debier-Sainton, Maria Gravari Barbas, and Peter Levens. Thanks also to Theo Aberbuch for hosting this event. I would also like to thank the teams of Project and Foresight Department, the Communication Department, and also the Una Europa teams for their hard work in organizing those 2 days, and particularly the Una Talk. Thank you all for your presence with us in person or remotely. Let's continue to move our beautiful European university forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we have a video from Clément Beaune, the French Minister of State for European Affairs. And I'm going to play piano while the screen is... No, I can't. I hope you memorized the paintings. That's why the screen was not already open.
Madame la Présidente, Mesdames et Messieurs, je suis très heureux de m'adresser à vous, même par vidéo interposée, pour les travaux que vous consacrez aux universités européennes, aux diplômes européens en particulier, à l'Université Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne avec vos partenaires de l'Alliance Una Europa. Je suis très heureux parce que le projet des universités européennes qui est né à la Sorbonne, dans les propos du président de la République Emmanuel Macron il y a maintenant presque 5 ans, est devenu une réalité, porté par la Commission européenne, avant tout bien sûr par la communauté académique partout en Europe. Ce beau projet, je crois, prolonge l'élan que nous avons connu de mobilité, de rencontres, d'échanges, de confrontations, d'idées, de personnes dans l'Union européenne que le programme Erasmus notamment avait initié de manière emblématique et dont nous fêtons aussi cette année les 35 ans. Nous avons désormais plus de 40 universités européennes. Nous sommes dans un espace en Europe où la science, le savoir, la connaissance, l'enseignement sont au cœur de nos valeurs, de notre modèle. Plus de 5000 établissements d'enseignement supérieur, plus d'1 million de chercheurs, près d'1 500 000 enseignants du supérieur. Nous avons les ressources, nous avons l'énergie, nous avons la connaissance pour faire de l'Europe ce continent de la science, de la recherche et de l'innovation. Nous devrons aller plus loin car nous sommes sur un continent où, c'est notre devise aussi, nous sommes unis dans la diversité, mais nous avons souvent le maximum de diversité dans le minimum d'espace. Certains y voient une difficulté, c'est parfois en effet une limite parce que nos organisations académiques, nos organisations nationales ne sont pas les mêmes par notre histoire, mais nous avons su et nous devons en faire une richesse supplémentaire. Le fait que nous parlions différentes langues, que nos systèmes ne soient pas les mêmes, doit aussi nous permettre de nous enrichir par cette mobilité et par ces échanges. La Commission européenne a fixé des objectifs ambitieux ces dernières semaines pour que nous atteignions d'ici 2024 plus de 60 universités européennes, pour créer de véritables diplômes européens, pour donner un statut juridique aux alliances européennes et pour avoir enfin une carte d'étudiant unique partout en Europe. C'est cet espace de l'enseignement supérieur, de la recherche et de l'innovation que nous construisons avec des moyens financiers renforcés à l'appui. C'est évidemment aussi important, plus d'1 milliard d'euros consacrés à ces universités européennes sur la période 2021-2027. Je serai heureux de connaître le contenu et l'issue de vos travaux, car le diplôme européen, c'est au fond la consécration de cette dimension et de cette ambition particulière pour l'Europe. Je crois que l'Europe ne se construira qu'en assumant ses lumières, ses valeurs, sa raison. Nous le voyons dans le monde contemporain. L'enseignement supérieur, l'université, au sens le plus large, en sont les premiers porteurs dans notre histoire, les symboles et au-delà des symboles, les porteurs concrets encore aujourd'hui. Ces diplômes, ces universités, elles vous doivent beaucoup. Je vous remercie de cet engagement et je vous remercie de porter encore plus loin cette ambition pour notre Europe. Merci.
Let's try now to better understand Una Europa's position on the joint European degree. To do so, I invite Maria Gravari Barbas to join me on stage. You can applaud her.
Thank
Maria,
you.
welcome. You are from Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne. You are chair of Una Europa Self-Steering Committee for Cultural Heritage, right? And you worked on the joint degree at the doctorate level.
Right. Thank you. It was said by our president, the very enthusiastic way with which higher education institutions responded to President Macron's call in September 26, 2017, at this very place, Sorbonne, where we stand now, is really impressive. Almost 5 years later, we observe that universities have an ever stronger and true will to go further in the Europeanization process. During the last years, European universities have been particularly active in developing an important number of joint degrees. Several tools, such as the introduction of the European approach for the quality assurance of joint programs in 2015, contributed significantly to the external quality assurance of joint programs. However, the European approach is not sufficient as enabler and apparently is not attractive enough to national authorities to make the necessary changes to allow the European approach to work smoothly and in the short term. We see that the global European framework needs to be much more developed in order to allow us to realize our dreams. In Una Europa, we are aware of the multiple bottlenecks that faces today the development of joint degrees via the European approach. The national regulations are very diverse from one country to another, and sometimes they are even contradictory. Also, differences may exist between institutions within the same country. These bottlenecks are diverse. Just to mention some of those: tuition fees, the selection of our students, the use of foreign languages in a degree program, the number of ACTS, the possibility to create interdisciplinary programs, and this is extremely important, the components of the graduation and of the joint diploma, the conditions of enrollment of students and PhD candidates, etc., etc., etc. The existence of such differences in national legislation makes negotiating a joint degree a very complex exercise. We are often lost in translation, to tell you the truth, with the different ways of awarding the degrees via single, double, multiple joint diplomas. The implementation of joint degrees via the European approach remains complicated, time-consuming, and also costly. And this, in fact, risks to discourage new initiatives. In Una Europa, we totally see the benefit of joint degrees for our academic community and, first of all, for our students. We are ready now to develop not only truly joint programs, but to dynamically participate to the elaboration and implementation of European degrees. We feel that we need to be innovative, to be proactive, while keeping in mind that we also need to be very pragmatic, very realistic, and to adopt a step-by-step approach, which is necessary in order to realize European degrees as soon as possible. We believe that the European degree could break down these bottlenecks while, at the same time, being a decisive path to facilitate the establishment and implementing more joint programs in the near future. In Una Europa, along with other university alliances, we developed a joint position on the European degree conceived as a quality label. This label could be linked to a new, dedicated and competitive funding instrument, which could be awarded on the basis of a peer review process. This targeted, competitive funding instrument developed at the EU level seems to us important, necessary to support such a European degree label by covering, for example, higher costs of setting up and of running joint degrees. It could also allow us to offer the necessary scholarships covering tuition fees, as well as mobility opportunities in order to ensure equitable access for all types of students and learners. Though this funding should not be mandatory, it can play a major role and provide an important incentive for higher education institutions. What is for us the added value of a European degree? First of all, the benefits of a label, which are, speaking about a label, to guarantee a clear and constant quality. Clarity also. When we speak about a European degree, everybody will understand what we speak about. The students, first of all, in Europe, but also abroad. The professors, the researchers, the universities, the enterprises, the market more generally. The European degree should be based on some simple accreditation via one country, thanks to the inherent and reciprocal trust. So simplification is important. The simplification of the process, thanks to the creation of a European degree, can be really a transformer, can even be a game changer, offering to European degrees a huge visibility all around the world and attracting to Europe global talent. Simplification will encourage more universities to launch European degrees, since the process for their creation will be more swift and the paths for its implementation more clearly framed. The European degree can really represent a push towards member states to allow for more flexibility of joint programs. So if we want to be realistic and pragmatic, we must be also very, very flexible. It is probably difficult to reach within a short time, 1, 2, eventually 3 years, the harmonization of our national laws. So it is probably much more realistic and probably much more smart to invite for experimentation in national legislation for the creation of European degrees. In Una Europa, we already took the first concrete steps to develop joint programs for which we are ready to experiment a European degree label. The Una Europa Joint Bachelor in European Studies and the Una Europa Doctoral Program in Cultural Heritage are the first two examples of our efforts to prepare European degrees. Let me present you here very, very briefly the joint PhD on Cultural Heritage, which is implemented as a double degree this academic year, 2021-2022. And we are extremely happy and very proud to have with us here in this room our first PhD candidates with whom we spent 2 wonderful days yesterday and the day before yesterday discussing cultural heritage issues in a totally interdisciplinary approach. How have we dreamed the joint PhD program? First of all, it is multilingual. Courses can be given in other languages than English, and PhD theses can also be written in English and also in all other national languages. We also have included language courses in the program, intending to offer the possibility to our PhD candidates to prepare their mobility to a host university or to a third university in the framework of their research or in the framework of their internship mobility. The concept of our PhD is also very innovative. It is developed through co-directions between 2 co-supervisors in 2 different Una Europa universities. An expert committee composed by 2 co-supervisors, so 2 advisors in 2 other Una Europa universities, allows to bring 4 universities together in an always different geometry, since this is decided ad hoc and in direct relation with the PhD candidate research topic. All the universities participate thanks to the co-created teaching materials, seminars, PhD workshops, and other activities. Concerning mobility, our joint PhD on cultural heritage, which is called Una Doc, includes a minimum 12 mobility months in the host university and also different research stays, internships, PhD workshops, and seminars in different institutions. One of the most innovative and ambitious elements of the joint PhD is also the development of transnational research teams. And in fact, in the last 2 years, we jointly developed in our universities 4 transnational research teams in a totally bottom-up approach. They cover 4 interdisciplinary tracks: heritage, global migration and mobility, heritage and digitization of society, social capital, mutuality and volunteering, and safeguarding cultural heritage. So at the end of their studies, our PhD students will have this international experience. They will get a double PhD awarded by 2 Una Europa universities, but they will also receive a joint certificate which is signed by all 8 Una Europa universities, 8 till now. The jointness of the PhD concerns all the levels of this program, from the teaching to the research, to the monitoring, to the mobility, and finally to the PhD defense. Furthermore, doctoral candidates are part of an international cohort that regularly interacts with each other through PhD workshops, transnational research teams, or joint courses and joint seminars. The vision of Una Europa Talk program is to contribute to the internationalization of learning, international networking, and the co-creation of a transnational research ecosystem in cultural heritage. It is also important to underline the fact that the program is very open for collaborations with universities and partners outside Europe. The idea, obviously, here is not to limit our PhD candidates into a kind of European heritage castle, but to develop a sensitive gaze to cultural and social issues related to cultural heritage all around the world. As it is developed up to now, the Una Doc can serve as a test bed for experimentation of a joint PhD on cultural heritage receiving the European degree label. And experimentation can be here absolutely useful, since more than other degrees, the PhD perfectly illustrates these many bottlenecks I mentioned before about the joint European degrees: language, fees, interdisciplinarity, number, and even existence of ECTS at this level of studies, the components of diploma, etc., etc. One of the main difficulties is that the European approach for quality assurance has not been fully tested to the same extent for joint PhDs than for joint master programs. So we in Una Europa are committed, as I mentioned before, to act as test bed for applying the European approach for quality assurance of joint programs at a PhD level. We hope and we believe that this could benefit to the European higher education area as a whole and beyond, of course, Una Europa. Thank you.
Thank you. Where are the PhD students? Can you make a sign? Oh, okay. We can applaud her, I think. I'm thinking of applying, but maybe I'll start with the bachelor. I don't know. Well, now I'm going to ask the panel to come and join me here. I'm going to introduce them while they are coming on stage, starting with the student of this panel, Ana Claudia Camerano from Jagiellonian University. You can also applaud her. Help me. Yes, please. Vanessa de Biessinton, your Director of Higher Education Unit, Directorate General for Education, Culture, Youth and Sports at the European Commission, please. Thierry Coulon is the President of High Council for the Evaluation of Research and Higher Education, right? And because we like acronyms in France, HCERES, right? Please. Antoine Doucet. Antoine, where is, come please. You are the Vice President of La Rochelle University and Vice President for European University, EU Connexus. Welcome. And last but not least, Peter Levens from KU Leuven, Vice Rector, International and Alumni Policy and Coordinator of Una Europa's One Europe project. Welcome. All right, we'll start with a few questions, and after that, of course, your questions, your contributions. I'm going to start with the same question for the 5 of you, and yeah, it's better here. I can see you better. I want to know your vision on the European degree, and I'm going to ask you to give us your insight in a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes tops. You will be able to elaborate later. So a quick answer on your vision, and after all, do we need this European degree right now? Can I start with you? Yes, please.
Yeah, sure.
Anna Claudia.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Good afternoon for all the panelists as well. It's very nice to be here, so thank you for the invite. As the student here, I can only bring my understanding of what I see as a European degree can benefit for students and what I would envision for that. So after hearing about the European degree and how everything is being developed, I really see that the European degree is sort of trying to bring a more innovative approach to higher education, trying to bring different perspectives for students. And what I really see as benefiting all of the students that are interested in this degree is that this sort of brings more clarity for their paths after the studies, especially when we're talking about a bachelor degree. And usually is when usually bachelor students are having their first contact with the university, with the academic environment in their bachelor's. So if the European degree can be something to show them more clarity, for their futures, to bring more possibilities and future alternatives for their careers, then yeah, definitely we need it. I think that an European degree that proposes itself to bring this more innovative perspective, a community-based learning that brings the students more prepared for their futures, more prepared for the market, for academic careers, whatever they choose for, then yeah, I would say we highly need that, and I'm sure students would benefit from that.
Thank you very much. Vanessa de Biais-Sainton, from the European Commission perspective, what can you tell us?
Yes. The first vision that we have with this joint European degree is to develop a strong European identity and a strong sense of European belonging, which is so important in the current geopolitical context. Actually, the first one who spoke about this joint European degree was President Macron in La Sorbonne, when he proposed to launch these European Universities Alliances. And now we have students like you who are benefiting from these 41 European Universities Alliances that we have now. As Clément Beaune mentioned before, our objective presented in the European Strategy for Universities is to promote and to support 60 European universities by mid-2024, involving more than 500 higher education institutions across Europe, so meaning thousands of students. And the skills that they are developing through these alliances, but also other kind of alliances, not only for the European universities, need to be valued. And you mentioned several of these competencies that they are developing when you described your joint program, the possibility to work in a transdisciplinary approach, for example. These are the skills that employers are looking for, on top of the multilingualism, on top of this ability to work in international teams. So a diploma that gives value for the students, that's shown the added value of being European, and a diploma that shows value to the employers, that they know that the students getting this degree have the competencies that they are looking for.
Thank you very much. Thierry Coulon, from maybe the evaluator perspective, or
not yet.
Broader.
Not yet. Not yet. European joint degrees will be a paradise, but the way to them will be like hell. But it's not the point. The point, the important thing is not the European joint degrees, it's the European universities. I was lucky enough to be there when they were conceived, and now they are growing and flourishing. That's why I'm particularly happy to be here. When you read the list of the members of Una Europa, I mean, it's superb. By the way, I have a conference on nonlinear semigroups. I'm happy to deliver it in each and every university. I mean, no worries. no, the point is the project and what you are doing. And the difficulties are good news, because Europe has to move forward. We know it for many reasons, and we know it today even more than before. So we have to we could have coped with these difficulties for years, slumbering, sleeping, the systems were incompatible, but who cared? Now we care. We have to transform this because you have a goal, and this will be difficult but extremely interesting.
Thank you, Thierry. Thank you. Antoine Doucet, what's your perspective?
So from the point of view of the university where I come from, which is La Rochelle University, which is a small French university, and here I represent EU Connexus, which is an alliance of small universities on the seaside, and we try to specialize in something called smart urban coastal sustainability with universities spread on all the coasts of Europe. And I'm telling this not to for marketing purposes, but actually to reach my point that for us, the purpose of this European University Alliances is slightly different maybe than for others, from very big universities like we have here, like actually all the partners in Una Europa. For us, it's a way to get specialized and large at the same time. So it's reaching the critical mass. And I think there's many different universities, many different types of university alliances with different levels of intended integration. I think the diploma is very relevant for all of them, but in particular for us, it's extremely important to be able to say that we deliver a European degree from a European university that has a specialized thematic area, and we can already see how this can be useful for students and how this can be visible abroad, I mean outside Europe. From discussions we had, just for instance, with Australian partners, where we went in 2019 and we were presenting La Rochelle University, and they were like, yeah, why not, interesting. And then we mentioned our European university, and they were like, oh, yeah, okay, I will bring my colleague from the other department and the dean of the faculty, and this sounds actually quite interesting, you know? And I can imagine that also for a student going abroad after his studies or looking for an employer, having this actual degree is extremely critical. And in the long run, no matter how all the difficulties, universities, and including European universities, are giving degrees. You cannot be a university if you give the degree of your partners.
You will explain us later how you are doing right now with La Rochelle and your partners. Thank you very much. Peter Levens, what do you think of this European degree? What's your vision?
I think a lot of European degrees and also a lot about them lately. But I think many important aspects have already been mentioned. For me and for us at Una Europa, I think all of us together realize that we are experiencing very interesting times where the world has changed. Also the way learners are evolving has changed. Because there is much more information to be shared, but also different ways of sharing information. And that also means that we should be open of rethinking university education. We cannot just continue doing what we have done for many centuries. In Una Europa, actually, already for 10 centuries in some of our locations. So that really has an implication also for what learners are expecting when they come to university. And it does not mean that we as individual universities cannot adapt to what learners need in Europe or in our cities, in our 9 cities with our new member Leiden on board now, and then a few more to come in the future. We are very well adapted to this situation, but we should also evolve further. We know by experience, for instance, in how the research community has been developing over the last several decades, that the advancement of science, of playing a role in society, is essentially there because of the international scope of many of the research efforts that we are developing. And this same approach is also what we need in university education. And this is why in many disciplines we profit a lot by working together also at the educational level. And this is what we want to do within Una Europa. In particular, there where disciplines meet, call it intertrans, multi-undisciplinary, whatever you like, but where all these disciplines meet and where new knowledge is being created at the edges of all these interactions, this is where things are happening. And this is also where we should develop some of our new programs. And this can be at the bachelor level, at the master level, and at the doctoral level. And our academics who have been working, for instance, on the joint Bachelor of Arts in European Studies, they know how to do that. They have designed a fantastic program. So if you are looking for another option for a bachelor program, please consider it. Well, regulations are not there yet and are not fully supporting. Maria gave a very nice overview of where steps can be taken, but solutions are around the corner. And we are very much looking forward to finding together these solutions with strong support of the European Commission and of all the individual member states.
You don't even need a moderator because you asked my question to Vanessa right now, I think. So thank you very much to the five of you for your quick and precise answers. Vanessa de Biais-Sainton, maybe your priorities right now, considering all the bottlenecks, expectation that have been already explained.
Our priorities first is to provide support to the universities to develop innovative joint programs. And we know the difficulties that you're having. We see it through the Erasmus Mundus program, for example. Only 33% of the universities are able to have a joint degree at the end. We see it through the lack of implementation of the Bologna tools, and you mentioned before the European approach to quality assurance of joint programs. At the moment, only 11 member states implemented. So our priority is to unlock these bottlenecks. We have presented on the 18th of January a proposal for Council recommendation to build bridges for effective European higher education cooperation. We had very good discussions at technical level in the Council, in the Education Council, and we expect these recommendations to be adopted on the 4th of April this year by the Education Council. And this will bring the first steps, very important first steps, to allow you to develop these joint programs. It addresses quality assurance, interdisciplinary, digital interoperability, and so on and so forth. So very good steps. Now, what has been agreed with the member states as well is to start this exploratory work towards a joint degree label. So what do we mean? I think it's important for all the audience to clarify that what we mean by joint European degree. It doesn't mean that the European institutions are going to deliver this joint degree. The treaty does not give that competence to the European Commission. What it means, it's a joint degree based on European criteria that will have been agreed among all the member states. So our priority now is to co-develop, co-create together with the universities, the students, the member states, the national quality assurance agencies, these European criteria. We have already started. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago with representatives from universities, students. This morning, we discussed the outcomes with the member states. We're going to continue in the coming months. And then before the summer, we are going to launch a pilot funded by the Erasmus Plus program to test these European criteria in the form of a joint European degree label. Because it takes time to develop a qualification. So the first step is to develop it as a label. So your next question will be, what is a label?
Okay, I'm going to sit. Yeah, absolutely. What is a label, please?
So the label would be a certificate that is given to the students on top of your degree. I mean, it's a transition until we can give you the European degree as a qualification, but it will be a certificate signed by all the participating universities in your training, and that gives a certification of all the skills that you have acquired through this fantastic training that is implemented by the different universities.
Thank you very much. Maybe a question for Antoine to have an example of the bottlenecks and the way you are doing right now to create joint degrees. Where are you on the process at La Rochelle and with EU Connexus?
So, how to say? So now we have one master's degree that will start next year, and what we did, we used this. European approach for the evaluation, and we actually relied on HCERS, if I spell them all out, which was, I mean, it worked. It was very convenient to recognize the quality of the training. But then we had other practical issues, for instance, in sharing the costs. Because we have everyone as national funding to actually pay for the teachers to give the classes, but actually we don't have extra funding for giving the classes, for creating a new diploma that we put in common together, and that is not already in the 5-year planning that we have in France, for instance. And for that we had to share the costs and build an economic model. And this economic model is a bit complicated by the fact that, in our case, some of the partners are actually private universities from other countries. And this means that to make the economic model work, we actually have to charge tuition fees, which is illegal in France for a public university. I mean, you cannot give a master's degree, so you actually have to go some tricks to give a diploma that is equivalent to a master's degree, but not a master's degree. And also in Germany, tuition fees are not allowed. So we run all kinds of issues, which means in practice we end up giving, in this case, we end up giving 6 diplomas, and we would like to give 1. That's a long story short.
Thank you. Vanessa, there are contradictions between national regulations that you have to deal with?
Yes, absolutely. I would say a lack of coherence, be it in for example, the number of credits that you're going to give to a bachelor or a master program. There are different countries give different number of credits, but it's also in for example, the proportion of national language, in which language you deliver the program. There are different differences between the countries, and there is, of course, the external quality assurance issue. And I know that this is, and we discussed it this morning, it's a big issue, because you imagine that it's already not easy between 3 countries and 3 universities. And in these European universities, you are on average 7 partners, and soon maybe 9 partners from 9 different countries. So can you imagine the nightmare that these universities are going through? I can say it for you. The nightmare by going through each different countries. And that is why in this council recommendation that will be adopted on the 4th of April, we have the following recommendations. You have different approaches between different countries in terms of external quality assurance. You have those countries that have a program approach in the way they accredit the programs. Here it is absolutely essential that all the countries implement the Bologna instruments, including the European approach to quality assurance. But what we recommend is even to move beyond and to go towards an institutional approach for external quality assurance, so that you accredit the institution, not the program, which is very, very important in view of the fact that we are expecting these European universities alliances to deliver not only one joint program, but many joint programs at all the different levels. So that's why it is so important that we together try to simplify that process. There is also an Erasmus project, unique, I think Una Europa, you are part of this one, that has been looking at the self-accreditation of European universities. So we have also proposed member states to explore also this possibility in this council recommendation that will be adopted on the 4th of April.
Thank you. Thierry Coulon, you met today with your colleagues from Quality Assurance Agency. You hosted an event also. Have you seen the light? Or maybe more simply, do you have some answers or insights?
Okay. First, let me, if you allow me, let me tell you the story, the initial story. So we were in summer 17, and I was member of the staff of the president, and when I think of it, I have the impression I had been there for years, because when you enter this, I mean, you are at the bottom of the mine, right? But okay, we had arrived in June, and well, the president wants to deliver a big speech on Europe. Okay, that's a story for diplomats. I go back to my business. No. There will be a part on higher education. And then we discussed, of course, with Clément Beaune, and he was the one who had the idea of European universities. And I must confess at this point that I was skeptical. I was not sure it would work. I mean, it could have been clubs of, people speaking together, and that's it, and one more, and another layer, and so on and so forth. But anyway, the president wanted something strong. He had a vision, so we had to deliver. And there were two key features right from the start. This should not be new institutions from scratch, but they should be built on existing institutions. And that's key because every now and then, there is somebody has a bright idea that one should create new institutions at the European level. Never, right? We have very strong institutions. They have a very strong identity, a superb history. We should build on them to go to the next level. So that was, well, there were maybe one or two discussions, but that was clear from the start. And the second point was that there should be universities in the full meaning, the full sense. Namely, there should be education and research. There should be learning and teaching and research, and one should link and innovation and and everything, all the missions of a university. Well, it happens that it was first thought as exchanges of students and so on and so forth, and that the Directorate for Education was the first to help. Thank you. Nevertheless, we still have the idea that it should be better balanced at the level of the Commission. And there is a very favorable circumstance that at last the two files of higher education and of research are under the same commissioner, so it opens perspectives. So that's enough for the story. And the end of the story was at some point, you have to find a place to deliver the speech. Well, the Sorbonne was obvious, and it worked, and that was a superb event. And today I've got the impression of closing the loop. Now, your question. Today, we wanted to meet with our European counterparts, to have people from the Commission. Vanessa was here, and to have many actors and to set a few questions. What is the place of Europe on the international scene? Higher education and research in Europe, of course, how to attract researchers and so on and so forth, and how to treat the new objects, Erasmus Mundus Masters, that are not so new, but that are still growing, the European universities, and so on and so forth. The main feature of this discussion we had today, and it's interesting for you, is that there are two different cultures. There is the culture of so-called quality assurance in training and the culture of research assessment. And they are quite different. Quality assurance in training and in education has been a big success, the so-called ESGs, European Standard Guidelines, because they succeeded in having something somewhat light and formal, but quasi-universal. I mean, it works for many people, and that's a miracle. On the other hand, research assessment, I mean, you have the success of ERC. The open science file is a very interesting debate. The way research assessment should evolve in the sense that we should be less quantitative and more qualitative. All these topics are in discussion. But we, HCERS, and a few others like ANVUR, the Italian agency, and a few others, we are very keen on evaluating institutions, research teams, and curriculae at the same time. That's our three missions. And we are not, well, some other agencies are specialized in quality assurance in education. So we wanted to set this debate. Now, what is the next step? The next step is to make a European approach functional, really functional. And that's a political debate. That's also, that depends on the push of the agencies and the push of the universities. I mean, if there are enough successes like yours, I guess the governments will soon understand that there's something has to be done. So I'm optimistic.
Thank you, Thierry. Peter, maybe a word on how you are working with quality assurance agencies right now with your joint bachelor degree.
Yes, I certainly would like to comment on that. Actually, I think we should not only discuss on how it is working, what the rules are in some sense, but also what the purpose is. And if we go back to the purpose, then I think it becomes much easier to find solutions, because all these accreditation measures have been implemented in their various ways as they are existing throughout Europe, in order to make sure that what is being done by universities has a certain quality. Quality label has been mentioned. So this quality actually is then something that you want to measure, and you need external eyes to see if all the processes that you have in place are there to make sure that when students spend a couple of very valuable years of their young life, that they really learn what they're supposed to learn. Now, I think this is in Europe very well under control. We, in the process of developing our joint programs, have looked very carefully on how the different universities are dealing with these processes, and it is different. It is certainly different, but they all manage to reach that goal. Actually, we do not have to examine all the procedures for that. We just have to look to how society is responding to what we deliver to society. So the graduates of our universities and the universities of my dear colleague here, all over Europe, they all produce students with a training that is well accepted to enter the job market, which is very diverse, and people are very successful in various sectors, and that really has been the key to have a prosperous, future-oriented Europe. So if we know that is in place, then there is room for much more trust. Trust in universities to deliver degrees, which can, as Vanessa pointed out, be and should be checked by institutional accreditation procedures, where we just have external committees having an eye on how we are dealing with our processes, so that we can maintain the quality that we have already demonstrated to have for many years. And once this is in place in all the institutions of, for instance, an alliance, then the trust is going to be mutual. And the process of then awarding a degree or recognizing a degree should be trivial. And actually, it is also trivial, because if we now with our scholars starting an international career, they check the degree, the disciplines, the competences, they look which university it is, and if it is now Panthéon-Sorbonne or KU Leuven or Edinburgh, it doesn't really matter. The workforce or the employers will accept them as high-quality degrees because this trust is already there in society. And then I think our politicians, our administrations should follow society and also make sure that this label of trust is given to university networks, and then reorganize themselves with procedures which are much more agile, much more lean, much more acceptable by the academic community, and therefore also of much more value for the work that they are doing.
Thank you very much. Do you want to keep the microphone to share with us what you did with a joint bachelor degree, maybe to have one more example?
Well, this was a process, and several people in the room can from first experience, add on to that. And so actually what I think the most important aspect was that we started from the academics who really wanted to develop an ambition. There was seen this need of developing a Bachelor European Studies. We're actually also working, and I've had a report on that today, that this is also very well proceeding, a Bachelor in Sustainability, where different academics of different disciplines think about content that really will make a difference for students who step in there. And once this was done, when there was a concept, academics came on board, people engaged, different universities checked procedures, and then we wanted to really have the ambition not to have 8 degrees, but just 1 degree. And for that, we really opted for a joint degree, hoping that we could deliver with all 8 institutions. At that time, we were in alliance with 8. It didn't work because the regulations were contradicting each other. And of course, this is absurd because we know that once a degree is awarded in these different countries, it doesn't matter where the degree comes from, because they are kind of equivalent in the European framework. So yeah, this was a bit of a frustrating period, but then we moved on with all 8 universities on board, but only 1 degree, with 4 institutions in 4 countries awarding the degree, but with all the input of the 8 institutions, so that it really is a Una Europa degree with all institutions on board, but formally not awarded in 4 of the countries. We are working on that, and the next step will be to have all 8 on board, or even more.
All right, all right. Antoine, also after the bachelor from Una Europa, the master from EU Connexus, you started to explain what you are doing. What is the next phase for you? What are you expecting?
Now we have a master, it's kind of a test case, basically. We launched a master, I mean it's a test case because it builds on common history between the partners. So, and now we built a master in marine biotechnology. We applied for funding to support it. I said that in design there is no support for creating new degrees, but we were lucky enough to get support to apply for Erasmus Mundus and get support from that, which of course is changing the deal because of course it's very good support. So this one will start now, and in the next phase, because now we're applying for the next phase, with actually deadline next week. I shouldn't be here. And you too, right? Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
I wanted to be here.
No, me too. It was just a moment of a voice of reason spoke too loud. Sorry, so now we have this test master's degree, and the idea is to extend it to other fields and actually go to the main specialty that we have, which is, smart urban coastal sustainability, which includes many things, and there is no time to give the details, but now we kind of tested the framework with the first master program, and then now we want to expand to a wider common offer among all the partners, and we hope. We, of course, always have a plan B. We build together, and we also build with the Commission. We also build with our national agencies and our governments. I really like the way these things work, because you see there's a lot of trust put in us. It's not like the orders come from above. It's like there's a pilot, try, if you find it interesting, go ahead and raise the questions, raise the problems, and it goes back to us with solutions. Of course, it's not like easy to find solutions, but it's an exchange. And I really like the way it's going. So yeah, so just to conclude, sorry to the parenthesis, but we build this with the idea that we can give, actually now we will be 9, so we could give 9 diplomas, but it's kind of it's not what we wish for, it's a plan B, but we aim for the unique diploma, but it's not only in our hands, so we just use these types of events to remind that, we really would like to give only 1 diploma.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the student perspective, of course. we see that it's really complicated. So from your perspective, what can you expect, what students can expect from the process going on?
I wish there was a more creative answer to that, but what I really think when students seeking a joint degree is definitely looking for the mobility aspect of this degree. And for me, I think it is the biggest added value that you have for this degree. And I asked several of my colleagues to try to find some inspiration for a better answer, but definitely the mobility. But not only because, well, obviously when you go to different places, when you study in different countries and so on, definitely you get in contact with new people with different perspectives and different experiences. But at the same time, you kind of find yourself and where do you fit in which culture do you feel more that you fit in more, or what types of mindset do you work better, what you're passionate about. So definitely the mobility aspect is the most important when it comes to a joint degree. But also being the most, let's say, important thing of the degree is also something that poses a lot of challenges, because at the same time, developing a joint degree is time-consuming and complex for universities, definitely is also for the students that are on board that. So it's not easy to, from year or even from semester to semester, to settle into a different place. There are a lot of things involved, not only bureaucratically, but also mentally, emotionally, and this should be taken into account when thinking of a joint degree, because for these type of courses to actually succeed, you have to have a lot of coordination between the universities. You have to have a lot of support for the students because, and especially on a bachelor level, where you assume that people have less academic maturity, let's say, when they are on board of that. And I'm not even talking of non-European students as well, because the degrees that propose to receive non-European students, then definitely they have to give a really extra support, because not only is not easy, but sometimes not even clear what it means to move from semester to semester, from year to year. So definitely it's something that is the most valuable thing of this degree, but at the same time has to be taken care with a lot of attention and a lot of care, so the students have the, let's say, all the tools in order to succeed through all this mobility.
That's a good point, thank you. Should the European degree be open to all higher education institutions, to all students from Europe, outside Europe? What do you think? It's an open question. Peter.
Yeah, I think it can be open, but well, we also should think about, I mean, the experiences that students have. It's not because we are having this degree with 8, 9, 10, 11 institutions that we want every student to study at all these institutions. It's not like that, but we create, as Maria has explained for the Una Europa a cohort of students who have a sense of belonging to each other. And they will study at 2 or 3 universities, start at one place, but meet each other virtually. We know now how to do this following this pandemic, but also physically by bringing them together in very dense, intense programs, which have also a virtual component, so blended, integrated programs are ideal tools to support it. And you create this community, this sense of belonging, even if you are only working at 1 or 2 places. So that is certainly something that you could expand by incorporating international partners from beyond Europe very carefully, and maybe not too much already on a bachelor level, and certainly not sending them all around. But what is important is that, in particular for a program like European Studies, that you bring the expertise from the rest of the world on board, and that you really place Europe in a perspective of a global approach. Another very interesting feature is that, well, there is some kind of appeal to a certain group of students from these programs. We are now recruiting students in our bachelor program, European Studies. Today we have 125 applications already, and counting, because this is still proceeding, of 45 different nationalities. So having that together in such an enterprise is a benefit on its own.
Who wants to react to that? Vanessa, maybe? Thierry? No? Vanessa. Go ahead, Vanessa. Yeah.
No, you asked the geographical scope of this joint European degree, and in view of the challenges, and you mentioned before, Thierry, that it's going to be difficult. In view of the challenges that we need to solve, we should really develop it step by step. So first within the EU, with the member states, there is still work to do, and then of course inspire the European higher education area, and then go broader. But I think if we want to succeed, it's important to go step by step.
Anna Claudia, you wanted to ask? Go ahead.
No, I'd just like to agree with the point by Peter, and also say that I get that question a lot because I'm not from Europe and I'm doing a master in European studies, and that's the question I get all the time: what am I doing here? But I think, well, I'm already finishing my studies, so I've been through all the mobility that is proposed in my studies. And what is really interesting to see is that no matter if my European colleagues, non-European colleagues, we all see that how much diversity there is in Europe, and on my perspective, that is what brings the European identity itself. To understand the amount of plurality there is inside Europe, and I think a degree, a bachelor, master, whatever is in an European studies should bring that, and should bring these also non-European voices and perspectives. And I think that's when the best results come, right? When we have these two sort of perspectives coming and bringing together and discussing European issues, but also having a more global perspective.
Thank you. Coming to you, we have time for questions, remarks. I have no idea of what's going on YouTube, so I'm going to ask my accomplice from Una Europa to help me with that. I have someone with a microphone also helping me to take questions. And now I'm waiting for you, like in the classroom. All right, let's start there.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name's Emily Palmer, the Secretary General of Una Europa. So the Commission is a really good friend to us, I think, in putting forward this European degree and taking this forward. And Vanessa, you talked about working on this quality label, which would be a certificate given on top of the degree. Now, if we've heard what's been discussed today, I think that there's a call actually to have less papers and to work towards one degree, and also really the need to have funding so that we can fund universities to put these degrees together. It's a huge effort, and also provide scholarships for students. So I was wondering if you could develop a bit further the ideas behind those points. Thank you very much.
Vanessa.
Thanks a lot, Emily, for the question. So as you know, there is an Erasmus Plus call that is open. The deadline is next week for the continuation of the successful European universities. It's not an automatic funding. There will be a selection. So as part of this continuation of the funding, of course, you have all the support, and you know that we are putting forward a higher budget as compared to the first 3 years, quite a substantive budget, up to 14 million euro for 4 years, so it's quite substantial. So with that, you can support the development of joint programs at different levels. Now, to pilot this label, we plan on top to launch a pilot call before the summer, where we will fund, if you want, the testing specific, not the development of the joint program, because this is done by the European universities call, but rather the work on testing the label, and also testing with the national authorities, how then we can transform this label into a qualification. So the more universities and the more countries who can participate, the better, to test different systems and different the differences between different systems. So I hope I answered your question, but on top of that, there are many other European funding opportunities, as you know, with the Erasmus Plus cooperation projects, Erasmus Mundus, etc. So you need to look for all these different possibilities for that. Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah, if I may, so this is of course very good news. So we certainly are committed to work on also what is called now a label, but it can never, I think, replace a joint degree. And we have to be careful that the label itself is not becoming a fetish and it's not really going to be something that will stop the process, because I think it's really not good enough as an end goal, maybe as an intermediate step. So I do hope that the combination in these calls of how a label can play a role in also delivering joint degrees is going to be eligible for that call also.
Hello, my name is Jean-Marc Bonissot, and I'm a practitioner of joint degrees through an Erasmus Mundus program since more than 15 years now, so we have some experience. And one of the best success we had, actually, is to attract non-European students. So I'm very concerned by non-European students. And indeed, my question is, if I have explained to an Indian student or from Singapore or somewhere else in the world or from Latin America, why should I come in Europe instead of coming to Columbia or any university in the US or in the UK? Indeed, in my mind, it's very difficult to explain what is a label. I know what is a degree or a diploma or whatever you want, but a label is very an obscure object for the students. So can we have something which is really, so we evolve over time in the Erasmus Mundus program towards a joint degree. Now we are at this stage, a true joint degree. But indeed, I'm a little bit afraid that a label could be not enough incentive to push the university or the alliance to go really to a joint degree. Are you not afraid about the same question? Or what could be the next step to go beyond just a label?
Thierry? No? Vanessa? All the questions are for you, Vanessa.
Seems so. No, it's a very good question. It's a very good question. We are ourselves convinced at the European Commission that we need to go beyond the label and that a joint European degree is definitely necessary to trigger the transformation and the simplifications that are necessary, including when it comes to the implementation of the Bologna tools and when it comes to quality assurance issues and many others. Now, of course, you need to understand that it puts into question many legislations across the member states. And we had very passionate debates in the council with different member states with a lot of emotions, as you can imagine. So the good news is that all the member states have agreed to go step by step and to start with a label, which was not taken for granted, I can tell you, that we had many meetings and passionate debates to come to that conclusion. So that's already very good. We have now an agreement that we will evaluate with the Council the outcomes of this pilot, of this test for the label, and the Council will decide for the next steps. But I am, as Thierry, very optimistic that after this first pilot and this first test, we'll move forward to the next steps. But it's very, very important that the universities share as well this with their ministries, because the ministries need to hear that from you as well, not only from the Commission.
Thierry?
I'll just say what Vanessa cannot say. Some member states are rather against, right? Okay, so we've got to convince. Well, we've got to push the governments. And as Vanessa said, they are against, but they are moving, slowly moving. Now, in Europe, many things were slowly moving. We can guess that things will move a little bit quicker in certain areas. May they move quicker also in the higher education area? Okay, well, that's a political story.
Peter, Antoine, the label is not enough?
No, the label is not enough, so that's clear. For us, it would not serve purpose, but it could be helpful in the process of going further. So in that sense, I really am positive about this initiative, and I do understand the complexity of politics. So we often say also within Una Europa, we are running like a European Union in a small scale. So we also have these sensitivities, and we have to find compromises. But the label will not stop us to continue the process of delivering joint degrees. And in that sense, I think it is important that in parallel with the work on the label, there is also lots of incentives given to kind of force member states to take steps forward to fully implement the Bologna process, and in particular the European approach for quality assurance of joint degrees. Eventually, like Flanders has done, like Spain has done, by having exceptions on the education decrees. And that certainly could be a step forward on the short term.
Antoine?
I'm exactly on the same line.
Nothing to add? Okay, great. Questions? Okay, thank you. Just behind the camera.
Thank you very much. I'm Joan Goury from the University of Warwick. I'm the University Level Academic Director for Education and Internationalization, and also from the Utopia Alliance. I work on the educational model. So I very much, thank you very much. It's wonderful to hear about the experience and the trust and the direction of travel and the vision of creating the open, dynamic European university. I just wanted to ask from your experience, I have two questions, and I will leave you to choose which one you prefer. One continues on the incentives, and I'm particularly interested in terms of how we support our academics. And we have seen through the years of the pandemic how stretched academics are, where we needed to curate and to deliver online and so on. And the vision of those programs and other initiatives, but in a sense the work that it's taking us towards this direction, requires a lot of effort and a lot of support internally, and what has worked, and particularly what has worked, given that we know that academics need to balance research and education. We also know that I won't start, but the parity of esteem between education and research is something we want to address, and we want, I'm sure everybody in this room wants to get in a position where we don't see them as binaries. So how can we do that? Because we've talked and we know, and I was very tempted to ask something about Bologna and how we're not going to sort of go back, but I won't. How can we actually incentivize internally? How can we support what has already worked? Where do you see steps that could be made towards this direction? So that's one question. I would really appreciate thoughts on that. The other is more on the student side, and we know we have students from particular backgrounds, disadvantaged backgrounds, widening participation, whatever framing, and we know that we want to create a space, we want to create learning experiences and opportunities for all. And we know that mobility, particularly what we're saying, and a lot of, we know the transformational potential, but we also know that it's not possible for everybody to get on those opportunities. How can we practically make sure that we have a quality of opportunity as we move along, and particularly for those of us from research-intensive institutions, what do you see as immediate actions that could actually already get us there, as we actually also working towards creating the policy framework that would support?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thierry, he was ready.
I will answer quickly because I have to leave. And your questions would require a 2 hours discussion, I guess. What I just want to say is that you are changing the world. You are changing the very way one conceives the jobs of teachers, of our colleagues, and the wages, the way we pay them, and so on and so forth. And you are also changing the life of students. So, well, good luck. It will be very, very interesting.
Thank you, Thierry.
I have to leave.
You are leaving now? Okay, so
sorry for
applause for Thierry. Okay. Yumbi? We have about 10 minutes before the cocktails. We are coming to it. Maybe about students and academics. What are you doing right now with the tools you have for the moment? Antoine?
I would say positive in everything. And when we applied for the pilot call for university initiative, We already had the idea that there would be a lot of hybridization, or where we'll have a lot of courses that are both online and in class, and we didn't really know, we had little experience in doing that. And the pandemic basically taught us how to teach online. No one enjoyed it, but we had to do it, everyone had to do it, and I know we started with the question of how can we get teachers to be interested in this online teaching in English with lots of students of different backgrounds, and it kind of came naturally in a way, because we learned, everyone had to do it, even those who might have refused, and then it was just another step to do it in this international background. It was actually much more, suddenly it became very attractive. I mean, and maybe it always was, but we couldn't know in advance. Then I'm not sure, there's so many facets to the question that maybe I just give you the floor.
Yeah, maybe a few additions. I think this is really going to be a challenge, to be inclusive in our mobility and internationalization policy. What we see in our different institutions is that the different managements of universities make this a priority. In our university, but also in others. Also very importantly is that this actually was one of the first actions that our student board took up themselves. So we have a project managed and led by our student board on affordably abroad, which is not only affordably in the sense of compensating with funding, because that's in a way an easy thing, it's just a matter of allocating funds, but also opening up opportunities, really creating the opportunities and also the mindset for everybody to have the possibility to go abroad. The way we also want to stimulate this is by stepping away from the traditional semester mobility, which sometimes is too invasive. Think about students with a young family or caring for a family member who cannot really leave for a long time, but then maybe short mobilities, well integrated in a blended program, could be an excellent alternative. So we are working on that, and I think there are options.
A comment, Vanessa? Yes?
Maybe I will reply to your first question that nobody has addressed yet. So it's a very good point. Work is going on at European level when it comes to the research assessment, but nothing has been done so far for the education part of the important work of academics in the universities. So we have announced in the European Strategy for Universities that we published in January that we would work towards a framework for the other leg of the career of academics, which is the training and the teaching, which is as important as the research part, because indeed to innovate, to develop innovative, creative joint programs, it takes time, and this needs to be recognized and valorized in the careers of the academics. So we are going to start work in that direction as well. And maybe I would like to add an element and to continue the story that Thierry started, you know. So Thierry explained a little bit what happened before the speech of Emmanuel Macron, and the speech of Emmanuel Macron, but I will continue the story. What happened after the speech of Emmanuel Macron? We had these European conclusions from the European Council, giving the mandate to the European Commission, the European Parliament and the Member States to work towards these European universities. And I must say that, and as I am responsible for higher education in the Commission, it landed on my desk.
And you felt from your chair.
Exactly. No, it was a fantastic and a beautiful speech. But then what do we do with it? And of course, we started to meet with different universities. And I must say that in the first meeting, and some of you were part of these first meetings, Thierry was not the only one to be skeptical. All the universities were skeptical. They were saying, but look, we are all European universities. What is this? And then we said, but look, it's the first time that we have a president of an important country that put the light on higher education and want to focus and do something for that sector. So then we said, look, let's dream. Let's dream about the universities you want to become. the obstacles that you are facing, and let's dream to overcome these obstacles and to build the university of the future. I like very much that title. And we have started dreaming all together, and I am so pleased when I see the first outcomes and the first results and the passion and the enthusiasm that you are all putting into this initiative, and to see the results with the students. So that's fantastic. There are still a lot of obstacles to overcome, but I think this enthusiasm that is giving us all the energy to overcome all these obstacles along the journey together.
Very briefly, Peter, and we have a last question.
Thank you much for the encouragement, but just to reply also to the second question, that's of course a very important one, and we need to kind of motivate professors. Actually, this in Una Europa for the different parts happened in a way quite naturally, because there was management support at the different universities, so people really were given the task and also the time to work on that. Of course, the finances helped a little bit. Was not enough, so we have a bit more now. It's still not enough. But that being said, what we have seen is that the communities of academics that gather together within Una Europa have a mixed agenda. So an academic is not just a researcher in one day and a teacher or an educator in another day and serving society in the weekend. An academic is a personality embracing all these different parts in a very holistic approach, which we also very much support for the European universities of the future, where we really want to integrate all the components in one enterprise. And what we have seen is that the people who have been very creative in the doctoral program on cultural heritage that Maria explained, but also in the Bachelor European Studies, were actually our best researchers. They have the innovation, the skills, the creativity to also deliver this very ambitious study program. And this is how universities operate and progress, by joining the different competences in one person.
Thank you, Peter. One last question from the...
Yes, my name is Nicholas Souls. I'm a very old English teacher here at Paris 1. I spent my whole adult life studying to be a good Frenchman. It's not always very easy. If the point of the European University is to nurture a common European identity, are these networks like Una Europa also being used, or could they be used to facilitate student mobility through the existing Erasmus programs? Would it be a way of making our partner institutions more visible and therefore making the whole Una Europa program also more visible for students at bachelor's levels who are not necessarily envisaging doing the European bachelor's degree and so on? Thank you.
Vanessa? No?
I
can answer. If
I think it's quite natural that, I mean, we want to see these European universities that universities of the future, but they should have these external relations. I mean, we should also share the external relations. So there's kind of the inside of the university gets bigger, but we still need the external relations, to make a very short answer. And of course there's two steps now. Of course, we have to focus on our joint degrees and make sure that there's a lot of movement and exchanges within our universities, but we should never close to the other universities in Europe and outside Europe. If that's
Peter?
Yes, I would say obviously. Today the debate was about the European degree. This is a very tiny part of what we are doing as European universities. We are there for all our 500,000 students in Una Europa. So they all should get the experience of being elsewhere in another academic environment. And actually today, when we were working and discussing on the rollout proposal that needs to go in a couple of days from now, this was top of mind. We want to stimulate more mobility within our European university, and of course also beyond, involving essentially every student in an international experience.
On that, we have given a very ambitious target for the European universities, which is to ensure that at least 50% of their student bodies, so for Una Europa, 500,000, so 50% of that, to benefit from this European university experience through mobilities, through the classical Erasmus Plus mobility, but through all the different formats and new formats of mobility that you mentioned before through the Erasmus Plus program, absolutely.
Well, my final question, and after that, we can drink. For all of you, for each of you, what should be done right now? Maybe to leave this debate with one idea, one wish on something that should be done to move forward more quickly.
Wow. I think that, well, after hearing all the comments and so on, I think that the most pressing issue definitely it is to understand what this label would mean for an European degree. And I think students are more and more being more critical with, I mean, obviously when we seek for higher education, we assume that there's going to be quality education there, right? So I think this label has to be more transparent and give more, translate more to the student what that actually means, you know, what it means to go to a degree that has that European label. And I think it's a fantastic idea to have this label. I think the more tools you give for students for their future, the better. But one idea that, that maybe can be interesting is maybe bringing students to hear their perspectives to the development of this label and to put them into the agenda of setting this label, of setting this, how this would actually be in practice. Because I think when having a more collaborative process with the people that are there actually involved on that, they are the users of that, so to speak, I think it can be quite useful.
Thank you very much. Vanessa.
Yes, I would say let's dream big and let's build on the enthusiasm to make this label a success so that then we can convince the member states and the council to go to the next step, which is the European degree for the benefit of the students.
Thank you very much. Antoine.
I think, well, that's basically the idea. I mean, it's a long process, so it's about, like I said earlier, it's about keeping these interactions. I mean, I really like the fact that things are not top-down. We don't have the Commission and our governments telling us what to do. We are the actors. I mean, the European universities are creating the European universities. And we are the experts, of course, of the academic world, and we see where we need to go. We see the problems, we identify the problem, we raise the problems to our member states, to the Commission, and we work out with them how to reach solutions, or maybe how to, in some cases, we just talk to our member state and we ask them to see, we kind of convince them to go our way if they are not going our way, and if they're going our way, it's basically lobbying to push them to ask for the solutions higher.
Let's go for lobbying. Thank you very much. Peter, final word for you.
Somebody mentioned, I forgot who, nightmares in trying to solve problems. I rather go with Vanessa using the word dream. I think we have continued to dream, and as you said, dream big, but in a certain direction. I think we are realizing every day that this world needs lots of solutions for major challenges, and not to speak of war and climate and energy problems. It is our duty, I think, as academic institution to think big, but also be creative and innovative in what we are doing, of course, in research, but at the same time also in the offerings that we have for the future generations. So never stop thinking very creatively and innovatively to improve the things that we are doing, as I guess that we can optimize within this university of the future that we are building together.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the five of you. Thank you to Una Europa to gather this great panel, and thank you so much for your attention and questions. It was a pleasure. And now the more important time to network. So Una Europa is pleased to invite you for a cocktail in the Galerie Soufflot. I understand that it's close to the place you had lunch today. Au Panthéon. Okay, au Panthéon. 2 minutes away. Follow Christine if you need. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.